Hi, Miss Higgins class. I'm so glad that you guys are enjoying reading Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle with me because I love it so much. So this chapter is chapter 5, and I don't remember if you guys have seen the other one, but I want you guys to try to help me find chapter 5. What page would chapter 5 be on? Alright, so we're going to look at the table of contents. And on the table of contents, chapter 5, do you guys see the name of that? It's called the Radish Cure. What page do you guys see? Yeah, it's page 68. So we're going to read page 68. We're going to start on page 68. We're not just going to read page 68. So it's called The Radish Cure. Up to the time of this story, Patsy was just an everyday little girl. Sometimes she was good, and sometimes she was naughty. But usually she did what her mother told her without too much fuss. But one morning, Patsy's mother filled the bathtub with nice warm water and called to Patsy to come and take her bath. Patsy came into the bathroom, but when she saw the nice warm tub of water, she began to scream and yell and kick and howl like a wild animal. Naturally, her mother was quite surprised to see her little girl acting so peculiarly, but she didn't say anything. Just took off Patsy's bathrobe and said, "Now, Patsy, stop all this nonsense and hop into the tub." Patsy gave a piercing shriek and ran from the bathroom stark naked and yelling, "I won't take a bath! I won't ever take a bath! I hate baths! I hate baths! I hate baths!" Patsy's mother let the water out of the tub and went downstairs to telephone her friends and find out if their children had ever behaved in this unusual fashion, if it was catchy, and what to do about it. First, she called Mrs. Brown. She said, "Hello, Mrs. Brown. This is Patsy's mother, and I am having such a time with this morning. Patsy simply will not take a bath." "Pardon me, just a minute, Mrs. Brown." She put down the telephone receiver and went over to Patsy, who was standing in the kitchen doorway listening to the telephone conversation and feeling very important. Patsy said, "What did Mrs. Brown say to do with me, Mother?" Patsy's mother said, "She hasn't told me yet, but while I am finding out, you had better march right upstairs and get dressed, and then you can pick up that messy, sticky, pasting work you left all over your room last night. Don't come downstairs until every single thing is put away." Patsy's mother picked up the telephone and Mrs. Brown said, "I'm sorry, but I can't offer any suggestions because our little Pernelia just adores to bathe. Perhaps Mrs. Grotto could help you." So Patsy's mother called Mrs. Grotto. She said, "Hello, Mrs. Grotto. I just called to ask you if you could help me with Patsy. She won't take a bath, and I am at my wit's end." Do you guys know what wit's end means? Wit's end kind of means you're going crazy, you can't take it anymore. Do you think Mrs. Patsy's mom feels this way? I think so. Mrs. Grotto said, "Well, frankly, I don't know what to suggest because our little Paraphernalia simply worships her bath. Of course, she is quite a remarkable child anyway. Why, Thursday afternoon she said—" Yes, I know," said Patsy's mother quickly. "Goodbye, Mrs. Grotto. Thank you anyway." Then Patsy's mother called Mrs. Broomrack. "Good morning, Mrs. Broomrack," she said, a little too brightly. "I wonder if you would do me a favor." "Why, of course, dear, of course," said Mrs. Broomrack. "Well," said Patsy's mother, "this morning, for the first time in her life, our little Patsy won't take a bath. The very idea seems to make her hysterical, and I don't know what to do." Mrs. Broomrack said, "Why, you poor dear, all alone in that big house with that unmanageable child. Personally, I don't know what to say because our little cormorant looks forward to taking a bath. Bathing is his favorite pastime. In fact, sometimes we can't get him out of the tub." "Why don't you let him stay in then?" said Patsy's mother. "Because he might drown," squealed Mrs. Broomstick. "Well," said Patsy's mother as she hung up the phone. By this time she was feeling rather depressed because it seemed that bathing was the most popular indoor sport with every child in town, but her own daughter, dirty little girl. In desperation, she decided to call Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle. She should know about children, thought Patsy's mother. She certainly has her house crawling with them, day and night. It certainly was fortunate for Patsy's mother that she thought of Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle, because although Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle has no children of her own and lives in an upside-down house, she understands children better than anybody in the whole world. She's always ready to stop whatever she's doing and have a tea party. She is glad to have children dig worms in her petunia bed. She has a large trunk full of scraps for doll clothes and another trunk full of valuable rocks with gold in them. She is delighted to have children pick up and look at all the little things which she keeps on her tables. And when Hubert Prentice dropped the glass ball that snowed on the children when you shook it, she said, "Heavens, Herbert, don't cry. I'm so glad this happened. For years and years I have wanted to know what was in that glass ball." Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle takes it for granted that you will want to try on her shoes and go wiggling around on high heels, which is probably why she was not at all surprised when Patsy's mother told her about the bath. "I suppose we all come to it sooner or later," she said. "Well, from my experience, I would say that the radish cure is probably the quickest and most lasting." "The radish cure?" said Patsy's mother. "Yes," said Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle. "The radish cure is just what Patsy needs. All you have to do is buy one package of radish seeds. The small red ones are the best, and don't get that long white icicle type. Then let Patsy strictly alone, as far as washing is concerned, for several weeks. When she has about half an inch of rich black dirt all over her, and after she is asleep at night, scatter radish seeds on her arms and head. Press them in gently, and then just wait. I don't think you will have to water them because we are in the rainy season now, and she probably will go outdoors now and then. When the little radish plants have 3 leaves, you may begin pulling the largest ones." "Oh, yes, Patsy will probably look quite horrible before the radish cure is over, so if you find that she is scaring too many people or her father objects to having her around, let me know, and I will be glad to take her over here. You see, all my visitors are children, and dirt doesn't frighten them." Patsy's mother thanked Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle very, very much for her kind advice, and then called up Patsy's father and told him to be sure and bring home a package of radish seeds. Early Red Globe, she thought they were called. The next morning, she didn't say one single word to Patsy about a bath, and so Patsy was sweet and didn't act like a wild animal. The next day was the same, and so was the next, and the next, and the next. When Sunday came, Patsy was a rather dark blackish-gray color, so her mother suggested that she stay home from Sunday school. Patsy's father, who by this time had been told of the radish cure, didn't say anything to Patsy about washing, but he winced whenever he looked at her. By the end of the 3rd week, they had to keep Patsy indoors all of the time, because one morning she skipped out to get the mail, and the postman, on seeing her straggly, uncombed, dust-caked hair, and the rapidly forming layer of topsoil on her face, neck, and arms, gave a terrified yell and fell down the front steps. Patsy seemed quite happy, though. Of course, it was getting hard to tell how she felt, as her face was so caked with dirt that she couldn't smile, and she talked. I am Etsy, and I don't take a bath." She also had to take little tiny bites of food because she couldn't open her mouth more than a crack. Naturally, her father and mother had to stop having any friends in to visit except in the evening when Patsy was in bed, and even then they were not at all comfortable for fear Patsy would wake up and call, Addie, really, bring me a drink of water, Daddy." At last, however, the day came when Patsy was ready to plant. That night, when she was asleep, her mother and father tiptoed into her room and very gently pressed radish seeds into her forehead, her arms, and the backs of her hands. When they had finished and were standing by her bed, gazing fondly at their handiwork, Patsy's father said, "Repulsive little thing, isn't she?" Patsy's mother said, "Why, George, that's a terrible thing to say of your own child." My little girl is buried so deep in that dirt that I can't even remember what she even looks like, said Patsy's father, and he stamped down the stairs. The radish cure is certainly hard on the parents. Quite a few days after that, Patsy awoke one morning, and there on the back of her head, in fact on the backs of both hands, and on her arms, and on her forehead, were green leaves. Patsy tried to brush them off, but they just bent over and sprang right back up. She jumped out of bed and ran down the stairs to the dining room, where her mother and father were eating breakfast. "Look, look again!" she squeaked. Her father said, "Behold the bloom of youth!" And her mother said, "George!" Then jumped up briskly, went over to Patsy, took a firm hold of one of the plants of her forehead, and gave it a quick jerk. Patsy squealed, and her mother showed her the little red radish she had pulled. Patsy tried to pull one out of her arm, but her hands were so caked with dirt that they couldn't grasp the little leaves, so her mother had to pull them. When they had finished one hand and part of the left arm, Patsy suddenly said, "Other ah!" "What did you say?" asked her mother, busily pulling the radishes and putting them in neat little piles on the dining room table. "I want bath," said Patsy so plainly it cracked the mud on her left cheek. Patsy's mother said, "I think it had better be a shower." And without another word, she went in and turned on the warm water. Patsy was in the shower all day. She used up to 2 whole bars of soap, and she didn't even come out for lunch. But when her father came home for dinner, there she was, waiting for him at the door, clean, sweet, and smiling. And in her hand she had a plate of little red radishes. Isn't it so important to shower? Would you guys like little radishes growing out of your hands and your forehead? That would be weird, huh? Alright, thanks for reading Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle with me. Bye!